Sometimes the past doesn't knock, it just walks straight back in, uninvited, wearing a different smile. A luxurious vacation, a glamorous girlfriend, and an unexpected encounter with the past. What happens when a millionaire comes face to face with his pregnant ex-wife and her mysterious companion? This is a tale of love, regret, and the secrets we carry. Welcome to the True Crime Studio, your destination for stories that intrigue and inspire. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to join us for more unforgettable tales. Ethan Carter and Isabella Reed sat on the terrace of the luxurious coastal retreat on the Amalfi Coast. This trip was meant to be their escape, a chance to reconnect after Ethan's hectic work schedule had pulled them apart. Ethan lifted his glass, a soft smile playing on his lips. "To us," he began, his eyes meeting hers. Isabella's eyes sparkled as she clinked her glass against his. "Finally," she whispered, her fingers lightly touching his hand. "Just us." They both took a sip, savoring the moment. Isabella leaned in slightly. "You know, I've been looking forward to this for so long." "Me too," Ethan replied, his smile genuine. "I'm sorry, I've been so caught up with work lately." She shook her head softly. "It's okay, you're here now, and that's all that matters." Just then, as Ethan lowered his glass, something over Isabella's shoulder caught his eye. His gaze locked onto a figure across the terrace, and his breath hitched. It was Natalie. For a split second, the world seemed to tilt. A rush of memories flooded him, laughter once shared, promises once made, and the quiet ache of what had been lost. His fingers tightened instinctively around the stem of his glass, grounding himself as he forced a steady breath. She sat at a candlelit table, laughter dancing in her eyes as she chatted with a tall, handsome man beside her. Her hand rested gently on her pregnant belly, and she seemed to glow with happiness. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The clinking of glasses, the murmur of other guests, all of it dimmed until there was only Natalie. Isabella's voice pulled him back. She looked at him with a hint of concern. "Are you okay?" Yeah, sorry, I just thought I saw something," he said. Isabella tilted her head, a playful smile tugging at her lips. "Oh, something or someone?" He hesitated for a split second. "No, just the sunset playing tricks on me, I guess." She laughed softly. "It is pretty mesmerizing, isn't it?" "Yeah," he mumbled, stealing another quick glance at Natalie. She was leaning in toward her companion, her smile brighter than he remembered. Isabella noticed his eyes drifting and turned slightly to look over her shoulder. "What's so fascinating back there?" she asked lightly. Ethan's cheeks warmed. "Oh, nothing," he said quickly. "Just thought I recognized someone, but I was mistaken." She raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. "Anyone I might know?" He shook his head, offering a tight smile. "No, just a fleeting thought." Isabella studied him for a moment before letting it go. As they resumed eating, Isabella tried to shift the conversation to lighter topics, the retreat's beautiful decor, the spa treatments they had booked for the next day. Ethan nodded along, but his mind kept wandering back to Natalie. Questions swirled in his head. Who was the man with her? Was she really pregnant? How long had it been? "Ethan," Isabella's voice broke through his thoughts again. He snapped back, feeling a bit lost. "Sorry, what was that?" She laughed lightly. "I was just saying maybe we could try that little Italian place by the beach tomorrow night." "Yeah, sounds good," he agreed. She gave him a searching look. "Are you sure you're all right? You seem distracted." He sighed softly. "I'm fine, just a bit tired from the flight." "Maybe we should call it an early night then." "Maybe that's a good idea," he admitted. As they stood up to leave, Isabella looped her arm through his. As they walked past Natalie's table, Ethan couldn't help but glance over. Natalie looked up at that exact moment. Her eyes met his. Time seemed to freeze. There was a flicker of recognition, maybe surprise, but she quickly looked away, turning her attention back to her companion. Isabella felt him tense beside her. "Ethan, seriously, what's going on?" She stopped walking, pulling him gently to face her. "You've been acting strange since dinner started. If something's bothering you, you can tell me." He hesitated, searching her eyes. I thought I saw someone I used to know. Brought back some memories, that's all." She softened. "Do you want to talk about it?" He shook his head. "No, it's in the past. I'm here with you now." "Okay," she said quietly. "But if you change your mind, I'm here to listen. Thanks." He replied, grateful yet conflicted. Isabella tightened her grip on his arm. If he was going to keep retreating into his head, she decided she'd find a way to pull him back out, even if it meant confronting whatever ghost still haunted him. But as they headed back to their suite, the image of Natalie's smile stayed with him, a haunting reminder of what once was and what could never be again. Back in their suite, the room glowed softly. Isabella moved quietly around the room, setting the scene with deliberate care. She poured them each a glass of wine and lit a single candle on the coffee table, its flickering flame adding a touch of intimacy. She wanted to erase the strange tension that had hovered over their dinner, to remind Ethan why they had come here in the first place. "This is what we needed," Isabella said, her voice warm and encouraging. "No phones, no meetings, just us." Ethan allowed himself to be led to the couch, sinking into the cushions beside her. He took a sip of his wine, the cool liquid grounding him as he glanced at Isabella. Her expression was open, hopeful, and it tugged at something deep inside him. His phone buzzed faintly on the table, a habitual reflex urging him to reach for it. Ethan glanced at it quickly, an automated email from work, then forced himself to turn the screen face down. Isabella caught the movement, her smile faltering for a heartbeat before she masked it with a sip of wine. "I know I've been distracted lately," he began. "I've let work and other things take over, and I've been putting everything else on the back burner, including you. And I hate that." Isabella studied him for a moment, her fingers grazing his as she set her wine glass down. "It's not just work, is it?" she asked gently. "There's something else. I can feel it." Ethan hesitated, the weight of her words pressing on him. "Isabella, He stopped, exhaling sharply as he looked down at their intertwined hands. "It's not easy to explain." "Then don't," she said quickly, cutting him off. "Don't try to explain it. Just talk to me. Tell me what you're feeling." "I'm feeling like I've been so wrapped up in everything else that I've lost sight of what really matters," he admitted, his voice rough. "And I don't want to keep making that mistake. Not with you." Isabella's heart softened at his words, but she wasn't ready to let him off the hook entirely. "Ethan," she said, leaning in closer, "I need to know that I'm not just something you come back to when you're tired of everything else. I need to know that you see me, really see me." Ethan reached up, cupping her face gently in his hand. His eyes searched hers, and for the first time that night, he felt like he was fully present. "I see you," he said quietly but with conviction. "You're the one thing in my life that feels real, Isabella. I don't want to lose that." Isabella let out a small, shaky laugh, the tension in her chest easing slightly. "You're not going to lose me," she said, her hand covering his. Ethan pulled her closer, his arm wrapping around her as she rested her head on his shoulder, determined to show her how much she meant to him. Ethan suggested they explore the retreat's private beach under the stars. Isabella, touched by the gesture, quickly agreed. As he stood to grab a light jacket, a ripple of hesitation crossed Ethan's mind, a quiet whisper reminding him of the past he hadn't yet made peace with. He clenched his jaw lightly, shoving the thought aside. Tonight was about Isabella. Tonight, he would choose to be here, fully and completely. The moon hung high in the sky, its silver light shimmering on the waves. The sound of the ocean was soothing, rhythmic, a natural melody that seemed to wash away the noise in Ethan's mind, even if only for a little while. "This feels like one of those movie moments," Isabella said, her voice light and teasing. "Are you about to propose or confess to being a secret spy?" Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "Neither," he said, his tone warm but edged with something unspoken. "I just wanted to do something special." She squeezed his hand. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble, you know. Just being here with you is enough." They reached the beach, the sand cool beneath their feet. Ethan spread out the blanket carefully, motioning for Isabella to sit. They sat in silence for a while, the waves their only company. Then Isabella shifted, her voice turning playful. "Do you remember the first time we went to the beach together? You fell asleep in the sun and got the worst sunburn of your life." Ethan laughed, shaking his head. "I looked like a lobster for a week." "You were so stubborn," Isabella said, laughing with him. "I told you to wear sunscreen, but you said, 'Nah, I never burn.'" "Well, lesson learned," Ethan replied, grinning. "I haven't gone without sunscreen since." They exchanged stories and memories, their laughter mingling with the sound of the ocean. It felt easy, natural, like peeling back the layers of a shared history they'd almost forgotten. As they returned to their suite, the air between them felt lighter. The tension that had shadowed their trip momentarily lifted. Isabella lingered by the doorframe, watching Ethan pour 2 glasses of wine. Tonight felt different, like they were finally on the same page again. She hesitated, her lips pressing together briefly. "It's been a while since I felt that," she admitted. He looked at her, really looked at her, and the sincerity in her eyes made his chest tighten. "I don't want to mess this up," he said quietly, his voice almost breaking. "I don't want to lose you." Isabella smiled softly, the kind of smile that carried both hope and understanding. "Then don't. We're here, Ethan. We're not perfect, but we're trying, and that's enough for me." They settled onto the couch, their knees brushing as they sipped their wine. It wasn't long before Isabella's eyes fluttered closed, her breathing evening out as sleep claimed her. Ethan stayed still, not wanting to disturb her. But as the silence deepened and the night stretched on, his thoughts began to drift. His gaze wandered to the ceiling, then to the glass of wine still in his hand. Natalie's face crept into his mind unbidden, her smile, her laugh, the gentle curve of her hand resting on her belly. Questions circled like restless waves. What was she thinking? Was she as at peace as she seemed? And who was the man by her side? Marco, was he the father of her child? The thought of it stirred something in him, a mix of regret and envy that he couldn't quite untangle. Ethan let out a quiet sigh, lowering the glass onto the table. He glanced at Isabella, her face serene in sleep, and a pang of guilt struck him. She deserved this version of him, the one who was present, attentive, committed. And yet, here he was, stuck in a past he couldn't quite escape. The room stayed silent. Ethan sat there for what felt like hours, the weight of his thoughts pressing down on him. The morning light seeped into the room, golden and warm, brushing over Isabella's face as she stirred beneath the crisp white sheets. The smell of freshly brewed coffee teased her awake, and her eyes fluttered open for a moment. She just lay there, soaking in the rare stillness of the morning. She turned her head and saw Ethan at the kitchenette, his shoulders slightly hunched, one hand scrolling through his phone, the other holding a coffee mug. The sight was so domestic, so simple, that it brought a small smile to her lips. This was the Ethan she missed, the quiet, thoughtful one, not the one buried in work and meetings. "Good morning," she said, her voice still heavy with sleep. She stretched lazily, the sheets slipping off her as she sat up. Ethan turned, startled for a moment, then softened when he saw her. "Morning," he replied, walking over to hand her a cup. His fingers brushed hers briefly as he passed it, and she noticed how cold his hand felt. "Thought I'd let you sleep in. We've got a spa appointment in about an hour," he added. She sipped the coffee, savoring the warmth that spread through her. "This is good. You actually remembered how I like it," she teased lightly, glancing up at him. He chuckled, but the sound was muted. "It's not that hard to remember, black with just enough sugar to take the edge off." "Still," she said, her smile lingering as she studied him. "Did you even sleep?" she asked, the humor fading from her tone. He hesitated, his gaze flickering toward the window. "A little." Isabella watched him for a moment longer. She wanted to push, to pry open whatever wall he was building, but she held back. "Not now, not yet." "Okay," she said finally, sliding out of bed and stretching again. "If you're not thinking about work, then I hope you've got the next couple of hours planned out, because I'm officially putting you in charge of fun." Ethan smirked faintly. "I'll see what I can do. But for now, go get ready. Spa, an hour." As Isabella disappeared into the bathroom, humming softly to herself, Ethan's phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at the screen. It was a notification from the resort's newsletter. His thumb hovered over the message, but his eyes drifted to the terrace below where Natalie's table had been the night before. It was empty now, just a few chairs and a tablecloth fluttering in the breeze. He let out a sharp breath, almost angry at himself for the way his thoughts had wandered back to her. What was she doing right now? Did she even notice him last night? He opened his eyes and shook his head as though to clear it, setting the phone face down on the counter. The water in the bathroom stopped running, and Isabella's soft footsteps padded back into the room. "All yours," she said, her smile bright, as she ran a towel through her damp hair. "Unless you're planning on skipping the spa and leaving me to enjoy it all by myself." Ethan forced a grin, nodding as he picked up his coffee. The boutique shops were charming. They walked further into the winding row of shops, Ethan lagging slightly behind as Isabella chatted with a vendor, his thoughts miles away. Turning a corner to follow her into the next shop, he stopped abruptly. Natalie. He froze mid-step, his breath catching as their eyes met. She was holding a delicate scarf. Her face shifted from surprise to a composed calm that he recognized all too well. "Ethan?" she said, her tone cool and steady. "Natalie," he replied, his voice tight, controlled. Isabella emerged from behind him, holding a carved wooden dolphin. "Ethan, what do you think of?" She stopped, her words hanging in the air as she took in the scene, her brow furrowed, her gaze darting between Ethan and Natalie. "You must be Natalie," her voice clipped, the forced politeness barely masking the edge in her tone. Natalie glanced at her. "And you must be Isabella," she said, stepping closer to Ethan, her fingers brushing his arm possessively. "Ethan's girlfriend?" she added. Natalie's lips twitched into the faintest hint of a smile. "Nice to meet you, Isabella," she said, her voice smooth. Almost too smooth. Her eyes flicked back to Ethan briefly before she added, "Well, I'll leave you two to it. Enjoy the rest of your trip." Before either of them could respond, Natalie turned and walked away, the soft rustle of the scarf in her hand the only sound breaking the heavy silence. Isabella waited until Natalie was out of sight before rounding on Ethan. "That was her, wasn't it?" "Yes," he said, his tone clipped. He avoided her gaze, staring at a display of necklaces as though they held the answers he needed. Isabella's jaw tightened. "And you weren't planning to mention that she's here, that she's pregnant, or were you just going to keep sneaking glances and hope I didn't notice?" "It's not like that," Ethan said quickly, finally meeting her eyes. "I didn't even know she was here until last night." "But you've been acting weird ever since," Isabella shot back. "So don't tell me it doesn't matter, Ethan, because clearly it does." He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "It doesn't matter, Isabella. She's part of the past, that's all." "Is she?" Isabella asked, her voice low but pointed. Her eyes searched his face, desperate for some reassurance. "Because right now, it feels like she's still in your head." Ethan's throat tightened. He wanted to say something, anything, to ease the storm he saw brewing in her eyes, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he looked away. The silence between them grew heavy and suffocating. Isabella shook her head, stepping back. "You can't even answer me. That says everything." "Ella, stop," he said, his voice quieter, almost pleading. "Don't make this into something it's not." "Then tell me what it is," she shot back, her voice rising slightly before she caught herself. "Ethan, I need you to figure it out, because I won't be second to someone who walked away from you." He looked at her, the pain in her voice slicing through him. "You're not second, Isabella. You're everything. He stopped, swallowing hard. "I just wasn't expecting this." "Neither was I, but I deserve better than being caught in the middle of your unfinished business." Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked away, leaving him standing there. Natalie sat on the edge of the balcony chair, her eyes fixed on the endless horizon. In her hands, a cup of tea had grown lukewarm, forgotten in her lap. Marco stepped out, carrying a fresh cup, and handed it to her. "You're a million miles away," he said, settling into the chair beside her. His tone was gentle, but the knowing look in his eyes betrayed his concern. She accepted the tea, wrapping her fingers around the warm ceramic. "I ran into him," she said softly. "And his girlfriend." "How did that go?" She let out a breath, shaking her head. "It wasn't much, just a few words, but it startled me." Her fingers fidgeted with the edge of the teacup, her eyes clouded. "I thought I'd buried all of that. Him, the past, the pain. Seeing him again, though, it felt like reopening a door I swore I'd locked for good." Marco leaned back, crossing his arms. "Does it bother you?" Natalie paused, the silence stretching between them. "Not in the way you might think," she said at last. "I don't miss him, Marco. I don't want him back, but it surprised me. Seeing him with her, laughing, smiling. It was strange. I couldn't tell if I felt relief or," she trailed off, searching for the right word, "sadness. Maybe both. For a long time I thought we were building something unshakable, but all we really did was build walls, around each other, around ourselves." She glanced at him, her hand drifting unconsciously to her belly. And then one day, it all just crumbled. Ethan, he had this way of making everything feel like it was slipping through his fingers. He could never see what he had right in front of him, because he was always chasing something else, something bigger, something better. Marco nodded. You're stronger now, Natalie. You know that, don't you? She gave him a faint smile, her eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and determination. I do. But that strength, it came from everything I went through with Ethan. The heartbreak, the anger, the guilt, even the forgiveness. I had to break to rebuild. Marco reached over, resting a firm but reassuring hand on her shoulder. And you rebuilt into someone unshakable. Don't let his shadow steal even a sliver of that. I won't, Natalie nodded, taking another sip of tea as her thoughts shifted from Ethan and the weight of their past to the life growing inside her. This baby, she whispered almost to herself, is a fresh start. I won't let the past define what's ahead. That night, the suite was steeped in silence. Isabella lay curled on her side, her breathing soft and even. Ethan, however, was wide awake. The bed felt too big, the room too still. He turned onto his side, watching the way the moonlight painted soft lines across Isabella's face. She looked so peaceful, so untouched by the storm brewing in his head. Yet, even in her sleep, her hand was clenched against the pillow, as if she were holding on to something, or maybe bracing herself for something to slip away. Ethan sighed, the weight in his chest growing heavier. She deserves better, he murmured to himself, barely audible. But the words didn't bring comfort. Instead, they felt like a confession, like he was committing to some unspoken failure. He rubbed his hands over his face, trying to shake the thoughts loose, but they clung stubbornly, refusing to let go. He sat up, resting his elbows on his knees, his head hanging low. His mind drifted back to Natalie's laugh, the glow on her face, and the hand she had rested so protectively over her belly. It wasn't jealousy that gnawed at him, at least not entirely. It was the questions. So many questions that had no easy answers. But it wasn't just about Natalie. It was Isabella too, her smile, the way she tried so hard to close the widening gap between them. Ethan felt his stomach twist as guilt pressed down on him. He didn't want to be that man, the one who hurt her by holding on to something or someone that no longer fit in his life. Isabella stirred beside him, her hand reaching out instinctively. Ethan, she murmured, her voice thick with sleep. I'm here, he said quickly, lying back down. He slipped his hand into hers, squeezing gently. Go back to sleep, he whispered. Her eyes fluttered open, her gaze searching his in the dim light. You okay? Yeah, he lied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Just couldn't sleep. Ethan, she whispered, propping herself up on one elbow. If something's bothering you, talk to me. Please, I'm here. He stared at her, his heart aching at the vulnerability in her eyes. He wanted to tell her everything, to pour out the turmoil and confusion and guilt that had been clawing at him, but the words felt too heavy, too tangled. I know, he said finally, pulling her close. I know you're here. Isabella rested her head on his chest, her hand splayed over his heart. I just want us to be okay, she murmured. We will be, Ethan promised, though he wasn't sure if he was trying to convince her or himself. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head, letting her warmth and steady breathing ground him. The sun shimmered on the turquoise waters. Isabella adjusted her life jacket with a grin, her ponytail swaying as she turned to Ethan, who was fumbling with his oar. Honestly, Ethan, you look like you're fighting the kayak, not paddling it, she teased, her laughter light and teasing. Ethan smiled weakly, adjusting his grip. A sharp twinge flared up in his shoulder, an old ache from too many tense, sleepless nights spent hunched over a desk. He gritted his teeth against the discomfort, unwilling to ruin the moment. As he pushed the paddle through the water, he felt an unfamiliar heaviness settle over him, not just the pull of sore muscles, but a deeper fatigue threading through his chest. He forced a smile, determined not to let it show, not tonight. I'm just out of practice, he shot back, his voice tinged with mock indignation as he splashed water, accidentally, of course, near her boat. Isabella squealed, playfully paddling away. You better not be trying to sink me, Carter, her voice echoed over the open water. Ethan managed to smile, trying to focus on the moment, but his thoughts wandered. He shook his head, forcing himself to paddle harder as though he could outpace the memories. Isabella noticed his effort and teased him gently. "Trying to erase me, are you?" she said, a playful challenge in her voice. "Just keeping up." Ethan replied with a faint smirk, though his grip on the paddle tightened. By the time they returned to the resort, Isabella was glowing from the day's adventure. Later, as they dressed for dinner, the polished elegance of the dining room awaited them. Isabella took her time, her hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders, her flowing dress shimmering under the evening light. She caught Ethan staring and smiled. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she teased, brushing a bit of lint off his jacket. The dining room buzzed with conversation and laughter, the soft notes of a piano weaving through the air. Their table was lively, and Isabella, ever the charmer, held everyone's attention with her spirited storytelling. She recounted an art show disaster that had left the crowd in stitches, her gestures animated, her smile radiant. But Ethan's attention wavered. His eyes darted toward the entrance. And there she was. Natalie. She walked in with Marco, her laughter carrying easily over the room's hum. Marco stayed close, his touch lingering on her back as they greeted other guests. Natalie's presence seemed to fill the space effortlessly, commanding attention without even trying. "Ethan." Isabella's voice cut through the haze. She was looking at him, her head tilted in gentle confusion. "Did you hear what I just said?" Isabella's gaze didn't move from his face, but out of the corner of her eye, she caught the entrance of Natalie and Marco. Isabella's eyes flicked back to Ethan, catching the way his attention was magnetically drawn to Natalie. "Oh," she said, her voice carrying an edge. "I see." Ethan blinked, guilt flashing across his face. "Isabella, it's not you watching her like she's the only person in this room?" she interrupted. The guests at their table exchanged awkward glances, sensing the shift in energy. Isabella turned back to them, her voice light but brittle. "Excuse me, everyone. I need some air." He watched her stand and leave, here, the flowing fabric of her dress catching the golden light of the chandeliers. For a moment, he thought to follow her, to explain. But explain what? The truth that he couldn't stop thinking about Natalie, that seeing her like this, so at peace, was unraveling something inside him. Instead, he stayed seated, guilt and frustration warring within him. He drained his glass in one swift motion, but the wine did little to dull the sharp edges of his thoughts. His eyes found Natalie again, and this time she looked up. Their gazes locked for a brief, electrifying moment. Her expression was unreadable. It was as though she saw right through him, and the thought both terrified and enraged him. The laughter around him grew louder, the world moving on as if his inner turmoil didn't exist. He felt like an outsider in his own life. The noise and chatter around him faded into the background as the weight of his unresolved past bore down on him. Natalie looked away, turning her attention back to Marco. The gesture, simple and unintentional, struck Ethan harder than he expected. She was happy, truly happy, and it wasn't because of him. He exhaled sharply, the realization leaving an ache in his chest that he couldn't name. Isabella didn't return for the rest of the meal. Her absence left a void at the table that none of the conversation could fill, and Ethan's guilt only deepened as the night wore on. Back in the suite, Isabella stood by the window, her arms crossed tightly. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands, the weight of the evening pressing down on him like a storm cloud. As he sat there, his fingers unconsciously fumbled with the keychain in his pocket. A nervous habit he hadn't realized he'd picked up again. The cool metal edges bit lightly into his skin, grounding him in the moment, yet also revealing how tightly he still clung to the need for control. "This was supposed to be about us," Isabella said, turning to face him, her eyes shimmering with frustration and hurt. "But all I've done is compete with a memory I can't even touch." "I failed her," Ethan said, his voice barely audible. Isabella blinked, stunned, her lips parted as if to say something, but no words came out. "Failed her? What are you even talking about?" Ethan sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "Our marriage ended because I couldn't let go. Of work, of control. I was so focused on building a life for us that I forgot to actually live it with her. And now, seeing her like this, happy, glowing, with a life I'm not part of, it makes me wonder what could have been if I'd just been different." Isabella's face hardened, the warmth in her eyes replaced with a cold resolve. "And where does that leave me, Ethan?" she asked, her voice low but sharp. "Am I just a stand-in, a distraction while you figure out your regret?" "No," Ethan said firmly, stepping closer to her. "You're not. You're more than that. You're everything I want. I know I haven't been fair to you, and I'm sorry." "Sorry," Isabella laughed bitterly, a tear slipping down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, her voice breaking. "I need more than apologies, Ethan. I need to know I'm not wasting my time." Ethan felt his chest constrict, the thought of losing her cutting deeper than any regret he'd ever felt. "Isabella," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I don't want to lose you." She held his gaze for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she turned back to the window, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then prove it." The next day was about to uncover the whole story. The morning started quietly, Isabella waking to the soft light filtering through the curtains. She turned her head to see Ethan still asleep, his face softened in a way she hadn't seen in weeks. There was a time when just looking at him like this filled her with peace, with certainty. Now, all she felt was a gnawing ache. She traced the outline of his face with her eyes, remembering the man who had once made her laugh until she cried, the man who had promised her the world. But now he felt distant, like a shadow of the person she'd fallen in love with. Her chest tightened as she wondered if she was holding on to someone who no longer existed. By the afternoon, Isabella had decided to take matters into her own hands. She wasn't going to let this trip be a complete disaster. She grabbed Ethan's arm as he scrolled mindlessly on his phone. "Come on," she said, her tone firmer than usual. "We're going to the pool. No arguments." Ethan blinked at her, startled, but nodded. "All right," he said, setting his phone down. At the pool, Isabella ordered 2 cocktails, determined to make the best of the day. She leaned back in the cabana, her sunglasses perched on her nose. Ethan tried to focus on Isabella, to meet her enthusiasm halfway, but his eyes betrayed him. Across the pool, Natalie had appeared with Marco. Ethan's chest tightened, his thoughts spiraling. "You know what?" Isabella snapped, sitting up straighter. "You've barely looked at me since we sat down. I'm right here, Ethan, but your mind is over there with her." Ethan set his glass down, a frown creasing his brow. "Isabella, you're overreacting." Isabella's laugh was bitter, hollow. "Overreacting? Are you serious? You've been a ghost this entire trip, and now you don't even bother hiding it anymore." Ethan shifted uncomfortably, glancing around at the other guests. "Can we not do this here?" he pleaded. "No," she said, her voice trembling but loud enough to turn heads. "We're doing this now, because I'm done pretending everything is fine." Across the pool, Natalie looked over. Marco leaned in, whispering to her, and she nodded, rising slowly to leave. Ethan's eyes followed her, and Isabella caught it. Her voice broke as she said, "You can't even hide it anymore, can you?" "Isabella, please," Ethan said, standing abruptly. He reached for her hand, but she pulled away, her chair scraping loudly against the tiles as she stood. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice cracking. "I don't need you to tell me you're sorry or that you'll fix this." Ethan's heart sank, and for a moment he couldn't speak. A hollow ache opened in his chest, raw and sharp. For the first time, he realized that losing Isabella might not come with an explosion, but with a quiet, devastating slip he was helpless to stop. He lowered his hand slowly, the weight of his mistakes crashing over him like an unseen tide. The truth was tangled in his throat, too messy to unravel here under the judgmental gazes of strangers. "Let's go somewhere private," he pleaded, his voice soft, almost desperate. Isabella shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "Why? So you can keep lying to me? So you can convince me I'm crazy?" "When I know I'm not," Isabella said, stepping closer, but Ethan stepped back, holding up his hand. "Don't," she said, her voice dropping, quieter now, but no less sharp. "You don't even see it, do you? How much you're still holding on, to her, to whatever this is." Ethan's mouth opened, but no words came out. Isabella turned and stormed off, her footsteps echoing against the tiled floor of the pool deck. He stood there, frozen, his hand still outstretched as if he could pull her back. Across the pool, Natalie watched the scene unfold, conflicted. Marco placed a hand on her arm. "You don't owe him anything, you know," he said. "I know," she replied, her tone resigned, "but I can't let this spiral." Natalie approached Ethan, who stood by the pool's edge, visibly torn. "Ethan," she called softly. He turned, startled to see her so close. "Can we talk?" she asked, glancing around. "Somewhere less public?" He hesitated, then nodded. Natalie led Ethan along the shoreline, and the moonlight casting a silver sheen on the waves as they lapped gently at their feet. When she finally stopped, Natalie turned to face him, her arms folded protectively over her rounded belly. Her gaze was steady, but her voice cut like a blade. "I don't know why you're here, Ethan," she began, each word deliberate. "But whatever you're looking for, it's not me. It can't be." Ethan took a breath, his hands stuffed into his pockets. "I'm not looking for anything," he said, but the crack in his voice betrayed him. "Seeing you, it wasn't planned. Wasn't it?" Natalie shot back, her eyes narrowing. "Because it feels like you've been following me ever since you saw me." He shook his head quickly. "No, it's not like that." "Then what's it like, Ethan?" Her voice rose, her frustration barely contained. "You have someone waiting for you, someone who clearly loves you. Go back to her. Focus on her." Ethan looked down at the sand, scuffing it lightly with his shoe. "It's not that simple." "Why not?" Natalie pressed, her tone sharp. "Why is it so hard for you to move on?" His eyes lifted to her belly, the sight of her pregnancy striking him like a blow he hadn't prepared for. "Is it his? Marco's?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. Natalie's jaw tightened, her arms dropping to her sides. "Don't," she warned, her voice low and dangerous. "That's none of your business." "It feels like it is," Ethan said, his voice rising. You're glowing, Natalie. You're happy, and I'm stuck seeing you like this. It's..." He broke off, shaking his head as if trying to dislodge the words. "Seeing me like this? What?" Natalie demanded, stepping closer. "Makes you wish we had this? That I could have been this woman for you?" "I don't know." Ethan's voice cracked as he threw his hands up. Maybe I'm just realizing how much I lost, how much I let slip through my fingers." Natalie let out a sharp breath. "Ethan, you didn't lose me. We lost each other. You want to make it about failure, but the truth is, we weren't right for each other. And deep down, you know that." "Then why," he asked, his voice breaking, "does it still feel like I failed? Failed us?" Her expression softened, though her stance remained firm. "Because you're still carrying this guilt," she said. "This belief that you could have fixed something that was broken from the start. But Ethan, my happiness now, this life I'm building, it has nothing to do with you." He looked at her, the weight of her words pressing down on him. For a moment he didn't respond. His eyes flickered to her belly again, and the question escaped him in a near whisper. "If it's not Marco's, then how?" Natalie hesitated, her hand instinctively resting on her stomach. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady. "It's mine alone." He blinked, his brow furrowing. "You mean a donor?" She clarified, her tone firm but not unkind. "Marco's just a friend, someone who's there for me without expecting anything in return. That's what I needed to figure out for myself after us, what it meant to stand on my own." Ethan stared at her, the revelation settling like a stone in his chest. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again, struggling to find the right words. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "You really don't need anyone, do you?" Natalie gave a faint smile, though there was a trace of sadness in her eyes. "Not in the way I used to think I did. That's what you need to understand, Ethan. You've got to stop holding on to this idea of what could have been and figure out what's keeping you from moving forward." "How?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "How do I let go?" She looked at him for a long moment, then sighed, her voice softening. "You already know the answer, Ethan. You've just been too scared to face it, and you're not going to find it by chasing the past. Not me, not anyone." She stepped closer, her hand brushing his arm lightly. "Let her in, Ethan. If Isabella is the one, don't make the same mistakes you made with me. Be present, be better." Her words hit like a wave, leaving him breathless as she turned and walked away. The moonlight caught the curve of her belly as she moved, a symbol of the life she was building without him. Ethan stood rooted in the sand, the crashing waves filling the space where her voice had been. He tilted his head back, closing his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of clarity, faint but real. Isabella sat curled on the edge of the couch, her knees drawn up to her chest, her face streaked with tears. She stared at the floor, the soft light of the suite casting long shadows that mirrored the ache in her chest. The creak of the door made her look up sharply, her breath hitching. Ethan stepped inside, his movements hesitant, as though he wasn't sure he belonged there anymore. "Did you get everything you needed from her?" Isabella's voice was low, trembling, but laced with a sharpness that cut through the silence. Ethan froze mid-step, his shoulders slumping under the weight of her question. "No," he said, his voice quiet, almost ashamed. "But I realized something." Isabella's arms crossed tightly over her chest, her posture defensive. "And what's that, Ethan?" she asked, her tone brittle. "That she's moved on, that I can't have her back." His eyes met hers, the vulnerability in them raw and unguarded. "That you deserve better than this," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "Better than me, dragging you through whatever this is." Isabella blinked, tears pooling again in her eyes. "So that's it," she whispered. "You're just giving up?" "It's not giving up," Ethan said quickly, stepping closer. "Isabella, I don't even know who I am anymore. I've spent so much time running from my mistakes, from my past, that I've never stopped to figure out what I really want, and that's not fair to you." "Not fair to me," she repeated, her voice rising. "Ethan, I've been here. I've been patient. I've given you space, time, everything. And now, when I finally ask you to choose me, you tell me I deserve better?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair, his frustration with himself evident. "I know it sounds like an excuse. Maybe it is, but I can't keep pretending I'm the man you need when I'm still stuck in my own head." Isabella stood, her bag already half packed on the dresser. She turned to him, her face a mixture of pain and resignation. "You know what hurts the most, Ethan?" she said softly. "It's not even that you're letting me go. It's that you don't even see what you're letting go of." Her words struck him like a blow, his head lowering as he tried to gather his thoughts. "Isabella," he began, but she held up a hand. "No, don't," she said firmly. "I've been praying about this, Ethan, asking for clarity, begging for answers, and you know what I've realized?" Her voice cracked, but she pushed through. "I can't save you, only you can do that, and maybe you need time to figure it out, but I can't keep losing myself while I wait for you." Ethan's throat tightened, his heart pounding. "I don't want to hurt you." "Well, congratulations," she said bitterly, a tear slipping down her cheek. "You already have." The weight of her words settled heavily between them, the silence stretching until it became unbearable. Finally, Ethan nodded, his voice soft. "I'm sorry, Isabella. I'm so sorry." She exhaled shakily, picking up her bag and slinging it over her shoulder. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Ethan," she said, her tone soft but resolute. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. Instead, he watched as she walked to the door, pausing only briefly before stepping out. The door clicked shut behind her, and with it, the last tether of the life they had been trying to build together. The next day, Natalie and Marco prepared to leave the resort. She spotted Ethan watching from the lobby as they checked out. For a moment, their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. She gave him a faint nod before turning away, her hand resting on her belly. Ethan stood by the window of his suite, watching the waves crash against the shore. Isabella was gone, Natalie was gone, and he was left alone with his thoughts. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel the weight of his choices, and for the first time he began to think about what it meant to truly let go. A few days later, Ethan lingered in the resort lobby, waiting for his car to arrive. The tropical ambiance that once felt like an escape now felt heavy, weighted with memories of Isabella, Natalie, and the emotional turmoil of the past week. As the staff bustled around him, he spotted a family checking in, their laughter filling the air. He observed the father lifting his child onto his shoulders, the mother smiling warmly, and a pang of longing shot through him. The concierge approached. "Mr. Carter, your car is ready." Ethan nodded but didn't move right away. His eyes drifted toward the ocean one last time before he stood and headed to the exit. Before leaving, Ethan dropped a sealed envelope at the front desk. It was addressed to Natalie. Inside was a letter he had written during one sleepless night. Words heartfelt but succinct. "Natalie, seeing you again reminded me of the man I was and the man I want to be. I'm sorry for the ways I failed you, and for the love I couldn't hold on to. You seem happy, and you deserve that. Thank you for teaching me what I couldn't see before. Take care." The concierge promises to deliver it discreetly, and Ethan walks out of the resort feeling a sliver of relief. Later that evening, Natalie sits on her balcony, her baby bump framed by the glow of the setting sun. Marco hands her the envelope, curiosity flickering in his eyes. "From Ethan," he says simply. Natalie takes it, her fingers lingering on the seal. She opens it carefully, reading the words with a quiet intensity. A mix of emotions crosses her face: nostalgia, sadness, and a faint trace of closure. Marco studies her. "Are you okay?" She folds the letter, setting it aside with a serene smile. "I am now," she says softly. On the way to the airport, Ethan stares out of the car window, watching the palm trees blur past. For the first time in years, his mind isn't racing with business deals or regrets. It's still. He pulls out his phone and deletes Natalie's contact. Then, after a moment's hesitation, he types a message to Isabella. "I hope you find everything you deserve. Thank you for showing me what love could be." He doesn't expect a reply, and that's okay. Months later, Ethan sits in a modest office, a world away from his high-powered corporate life. He's begun volunteering at a legal aid clinic, using his skills to help those who can't afford representation. It's not glamorous, but it's fulfilling. A photo of Isabella, taken during their happier times, sits on his desk. It's not there out of longing, but as a reminder of what he learned about vulnerability and connection. Natalie cradles her newborn son in a quiet nursery, her heart swelling with love. Marco sits nearby, rocking gently in a chair, the two of them sharing a peaceful silence. As she looks down at her child, she feels an overwhelming sense of purpose. The past feels like a distant chapter, one she's grateful for, but one she's glad to leave behind. Dear friend, life doesn't always grant us the closure we crave, nor the happy endings we expect. Sometimes healing isn't about fixing what's broken, but about learning to carry the cracks with grace. Like Ethan, we must find the strength to forgive, to let go, and to walk toward the future with lighter hearts. Stoic wisdom reminds us, the obstacle on the path becomes the path. When we stop resisting what hurts, we begin to transform it into something deeper, something truer. May you always have the courage to face your past and the hope to shape a better tomorrow. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to our channel for more journeys of resilience and hope.